Hey yo, everyone. It's December, which means that most of the big games for the year have been released, the Game Awards are about to take place, and we're gearing up for whatever 2025 has in store for us. But instead of just looking ahead at what's to come, today I wanted to reflect a bit on 2024 and all the craziness that the last 12 months has thrown at us. You know how Spotify does their Spotify Wrap thing, where you can look back at the year and see all that you listened to and be like, what? That was this year? Well, I wanted to do something similar to that, but with gaming news. So today I've compiled a list of what I think are some of the biggest, most talked about gaming stories of the year. I'm not going to go into super big detail on all of them because that would take forever, but I think it's worth highlighting some of these industry events from the past year. As always, if you enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Alright, let's get it. Alrighty, let's kick things off with a dub. Tetris was beaten. Yeah, you know Tetris, right? With over 520 million copies sold worldwide, Tetris is the best-selling video game of all time, yet no human has ever beaten it. I say human because technically it has been beaten before, but by an AI, so we don't really count that. Tetris isn't really a game that can be beaten since it's basically an endless puzzle game with no scripted ending, but somehow, some way, 13-year-old Willis Gibson, or Blue Scooty, managed to beat Tetris when he forced the game into a kill screen. Is crashing the game equivalent to beating it? Well, if it was easy, then I'm sure someone would have done it in Tetris's 40-year lifetime. I mean, there's like a whole dedicated scientific community behind this. So in this scenario, I'm gonna go ahead and say, hell yeah, this counts as beating it. Essentially, this kid got so good at Tetris that the coding couldn't go any further.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Gibson broke the world records for the overall high score, level achieved, and total number of lines. It's so incredulous that Vince Clement, CEO of Classic Tetris World Championship, said that it was unbelievable and developers didn't think anyone would ever make it that far. Nice going, kid. Maybe there's hope for our future after all. On to some money moves, in February, Disney announced that they were investing $1.5 billion into Epic. Epic Games, most famously known for their little indie hit Fortnite, appears to be Disney's main collaborator for the foreseeable future. In this agreement, the two companies will work together to create new games and new experiences that will further expand the reach of beloved Disney stories and experiences. Even though this news is almost a year old now, we still don't have many details on what exactly Disney and Epic are going to be cooking up. From the looks of things, it sounds like Disney wanted to create a persistent presence in the gaming industry, so naturally they went straight to Fortnite. Now, just from the announcement, it looks like Epic will be producing something that is more than just Fortnite or another video game. Apparently, this new project will be a place where people can play, watch, shop, and engage with content, characters, and stories from Disney franchises like Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and Avatar. The trailer shows off this kinda amusement park times Fortnite world, and I really don't know what to make of it. Is this just supposed to be like a metaverse for everything Disney? Kinda looks like it. Honestly, I have no idea where this is going, but I'm very curious to see how everything plays out. At the very least, maybe we'll get the fantastic car in Rocket League. It seems as if AI is everywhere these days. From AI DJs to AI loading screens, it's pretty obvious that the tech industry is trailblazing the future of artificial intelligence. While it's great for helping with video game development, such as coding, it can be pretty controversial when it comes to voice acting. So it should come as no surprise that SAG-AFTRA authorized a strike after major video game publishers failed to come upon an agreement on how AI should be used in voice work. After about a year and a half of meetings, the 10 companies that were holding out negotiations were some of the biggest players in the game, including Activision, EA, Epic Games, Insomniac, Take-Two Productions, and Warner Bros. Games. The chief negotiator for SAG-AFTRA, Duncan Crabtree Ireland, wow, what a last name, said in a statement that the video game industry generates billions of dollars in profit annually. The driving force behind that success is the creative people who design and create those games. That includes the SAG-AFTRA members who bring memorable and beloved game characters to life, and they deserve and demand the same fundamental protections as performers in film, television, streaming, and music. fair compensation, and the right of informed consent for the AI use of their faces, voices, and bodies. Frankly, it's stunning that these video game studios haven't learned anything from the lessons of last year, that our members can and will stand up and demand fair and equitable treatment with respect to AI. This is a pretty big deal because not only do these companies have some of the most influence in the gaming industry, but they were also in the middle of some AAA development like GTA 6. With the strike ongoing, voice actors couldn't work or record lines for any games being developed by those publishers. Now, a temporary agreement was eventually made, but the strike went on for about 3 months with no voice work, so development was definitely affected on a few different games. The future of AI in the gaming industry is still very much up in the air, and if something isn't figured out soon, then we could be looking at another strike where these voice actors won't be available for work. Who knows how long that will last or how many games will be affected? We get enough delays as it is, so hopefully a long-term agreement will be found sooner rather than later. On a lighter note, PlayStation is celebrating its 30th anniversary. For the last 3 decades, PlayStation has been dominating the video game industry. The original PlayStation was the first console to sell 100 million copies worldwide. The PlayStation 2 is still the best-selling console ever. The PlayStation 3 had some issues, but the PS4 and PS5 are both highly successful. If you didn't know, the beginning of PlayStation's reign started with a revenge story. Yes sir, in the late 80s, Sony had a deal with Nintendo to produce their hardware components. This is kinda where they first started in the industry. However, in 1991, Nintendo and Sony failed to come upon an agreement on how revenue should be split, so ended their partnership. In retaliation, Sony decided to move forward with their video game tech and release the PlayStation to worldwide success. The rest is kinda history. Since then, we've gotten 5 main iterations of the console and a handful of spin-offs. On top of that, PlayStation has garnered a reputation for producing some of the best single-player experiences the industry has ever seen. It's been a great 30 years for the company, and I can't wait to see what's next. Onto a sadder note, after 33 years, the longest-running video game magazine officially came to an end. In August, GameStop ended Game Informer. Now, for the younger audiences out there, maybe you're not super familiar with Game Informer, and I guess I can't really blame you. I mean, who the heck reads a magazine? But if you were around during its glory years, man, this thing was like the ultimate peek behind the curtain for video game nerds. Over the last few years, the brand has evolved to publishing on its own dedicated website and podcast, but after a tumultuous couple of years, GameStop had to close the book on the publication. It was kinda nasty work from GameStop too, not gonna lie. They just called the staff into a meeting on a Friday and said they were shutting down immediately. Everyone was laid off with severance packages and the website was taken down almost instantly. I mean, I guess I can understand the shutting down part, but why take down the website? There were a lot of interesting tidbits and gaming history in there. Decades of articles, reviews, sneak peeks, and interviews were just scrubbed from the internet. This was some of the industry's best reporting, and now it's just simply inaccessible. Based in my city, Minneapolis, Game Informer was the last surviving major video game publication. It outlived some of the most iconic magazines of its era. Honestly, Game Informer was basically YouTube gaming before YouTube, a place where gamers could get excited for what was next or learn more about the games that they've never heard of before. In the end, Game Informer was probably always going to end up getting shut down, but to see the website and all the historical accounts it once held disappear is just tragic. Rest in peace, Game Informer. Thank you for the memories. You were more than just a magazine. Sticking with some sombering news, the Wii U and Nintendo 3DS online shops closed this past year, as well as the Xbox 360 store, but a lot of those games are still purchasable on the Xbox Marketplace, so we don't really need to talk about it. As we navigate this ever more digital future, it's interesting to see how companies will handle their older games and software. The Wii U and 3DS were some very proprietary hardware, which means that not all of their games are easily available on modern devices like the Switch. The closure of these digital storefronts and the lack of accessibility to games from that generation raise questions about video game preservation. What happens to those games? Are they gone forever, or will they ever get re-released? Physical games may survive through the secondhand market, but for games that were digital only, I don't know. It's times like this where gamers legitimately have no way to play particular games without resorting to piracy or emulation. I've said this once, and I'll say it again. We are willing to buy these games. Just make them available on modern devices. Good lord. As the gaming industry evolves, we're gonna have to figure out a way to protect these games from the past. The end of the 7th generation is either a warning of what's to come or a kick in the butt reminding us we need to find a way to preserve our video game history. God, Nintendo, sometimes I love you, sometimes I'm just disgusted with you. This time, it's more the latter than the former. In September, it was reported that Nintendo and Pokemon were suing Palworld and their developer Pocket Pair. Palworld, if you didn't know, is basically Pokemon with guns. It's not really my thing, but people have been digging it, and it went pretty viral back in January of this year. Apparently though, the game is being accused of copying various patents filed by Nintendo. These patents are supposedly the game mechanics that are most associated with Pokemon games, such as throwing a ball to capture a monster. Look, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that I do not agree with Nintendo on this. You guys have been pumping out subpar to terrible Pokemon games for the last decade, and then someone finally comes around to challenge your throne and you guys just sue them? Why don't you up your game and make a better Pokemon title? You know, like you used to? I hope that Palworld wins this case. Not only because I want Nintendo and Pokemon to actually produce better games instead of just suing their competition, but also because I don't think I believe in copywriting game mechanics. It's a shame that there are some incredible video game systems out there that haven't been used simply because there's a patent on them. I'm talking to you, Nemesis System. Plus, at the end of the day, I like to root for the underdog. I think Pocket Pair's statement summed it up best. It is truly unfortunate that we will be forced to allocate significant time to matters unrelated to game development due to this lawsuit. However, we will do our utmost for our fans and to ensure that indie game developers are not hindered or discouraged from pursuing their creative ideas. Like I said, I hope Pocket Pair wins this thing. It would be a statement win for indie developers everywhere. 2024 was an interesting year for hardware. The biggest release, of course, being the PlayStation 5 Pro. I've already shared my thoughts on it, but if you want the Spark Notes, I think this sucks and is a bad idea. Like, the tech behind it is great, no debating that, but the $700 price tag and lack of motivation to upgrade really makes it feel like a lazy cash grab by PlayStation. The upgrades are minimum and in some cases even detrimental. Maybe if they would have showed off a new game to pair with it, like the next God of War or even Ghost of Yotei, then I think reception would have been far different. Instead, they just presented games that are a few years old at this point and didn't really show anything that really wowed consumers. On a positive note, however, both Xbox and PlayStation have had leaks that they are working on their own handheld systems to challenge the Switch. Meanwhile, the Nintendo Switch successor is fighting for its life to remain a secret, but it sounds like we'll be getting an announcement of that console sooner rather than later. Going back to PlayStation and Xbox though, Sony has a history on this front, but this is Xbox's first real shot at a handheld. Apparently both devices are still years away, which really sucks, but I'm very excited to see what each of these companies comes up with. Until then, it looks like the Alarmo will go unchallenged. 2024 also marks the first year that Call of Duty is officially owned by Microsoft, and it appears as if Xbox is beginning to reap the benefits. Releasing Black Ops 6 day one on Game Pass led to the game being one of the most successful Call of Duty launches ever. It ranks number 1 in total player counts, hours played, and total matches. I'll admit, I've been a big hater of Call of Duty in the past, especially last year's Modern Warfare 3, but I'm thoroughly enjoying Black Ops 6. I gotta give them their flowers. I think Treyarch did an excellent job with this one. A surprisingly smooth launch, a plethora of content to dive into right away, fun multiplayer, great zombies, and one of the most innovative campaigns in all of Call of Duty. Black Ops 6 wasn't the only big hit for Game Pass this year though. Xbox's major acquisitions and partnerships these past few years are finally starting to pay off. From the overwhelmingly positive reaction to Indiana Jones to the return of the Stalker franchise, Xbox has had a pretty great year. If this is how Game Pass will be operating in the future, it's getting harder and harder to ignore the value of owning a subscription. I mean, if Microsoft's first-party studios are able to produce the high-quality games we're all expecting, then Xbox and Game Pass is just going to continue to become a better and better deal. Here's to hoping they don't muck it up, and this is just the beginning. I mean, what do I even say here? Concord came and went like a fart in the wind. What was supposed to be Sony's live service tentpole game ended up being one of the most expensive disasters in all of video game history. Concord was supposedly in development for over 8 years with a budget north of $400 million. All of that for a game that would ultimately be shut down after just 2 weeks. Yeah, the numbers were never great, in fact they were never even good, but if you spend that much time and money and effort on a game, I think you gotta at least ride it out a little bit longer, right? The game lacked any sort of real marketing, and a ton of people didn't even realize it was coming out when it finally launched. From what I've heard, the game was actually solid, mechanically speaking. Sure, the characters were a bunch of wackadoos, but I think that's what the studio was going for. They wanted Concord to be their Overwatch, their Star Wars even, with a bunch of spin-offs. Instead, the game failed to eclipse even 1,000 players on Steam, which ultimately led to the game and studio behind it being shut down permanently. I'm curious to see how video game historians will look back at Concord. Will this be a topic of video game preservation, considering the fact that the game basically is just zapped from existence? Or will this just be another blip in the live service era? Either way, big bummer for all the devs who worked on this. You know, I've mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. In a world where terrible launches are somehow able to redeem themselves, I would have loved to have seen how Sony and Concord would have navigated their shaky start. I mean, maybe this outcome is the one we'd always end up with, but I think the people behind the game at least deserved a chance to prove otherwise. Over the last few years, video game adaptations have really started to pick up the pace. Not only are there more than ever, but the quality has also improved dramatically. From Amazon Prime's excellent Fallout show to the upcoming Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie, video game adaptations have never been this good. It seems as if Hollywood has finally cracked the case on how to properly convey a video game on the big screen. Whether it's faithfully adapting a beloved storyline or crafting a new adventure or creating an entirely new character, it appears as if studios have managed to scout the right talent for the job. Fans of the source material, people who understand why these IPs are so beloved in the first place. And with these adaptations being successful, it has also led people back to the original video games. I mean, look at the Fallout show as an example. The great writing, acting, and world building done by the showrunners created a desire for audience members to learn more about this universe. And what better way to do that than hopping into the universe itself? Because of the show's popularity, Fallout 4's numbers skyrocketed to heights it hasn't seen since its launch, which was almost 10 years ago. Of course, not all of these adaptations have panned out. It seems as if some studios still have some tough lessons to learn, but in general, video game adaptations are definitely trending up. Alright, I want to end this on a bit of a serious note. With how 2024 played out, a lot of people in the gaming community voiced their concerns on the industry's trajectory. What do all of these layoffs and studio closures mean for the future of gaming? Ever since 2020, the video game industry has had to deal with some pretty tough decisions. After the pandemic sent video game sales booming, companies overhired to try and maximize the new wave of gamers. As the world started returning to normalcy, those companies were left with unrealistic expectations and overstaffed studios. Sadly, a lot of those developers, and in some cases entire studios, were let go. 2024 has been especially tough for video game workers. Almost every major publisher has had layoffs, with some companies ending up being shut down completely. To add insult to injury, these big companies like a Microsoft or Sony were buying up these independent studios to grow and support them, but ultimately failed to do so. Thousands of employees have lost their livelihood due to corporate greed and negligence. Some of the most beloved video game studios to have ever existed have now been largely hindered or closed entirely. Even studios with recent success, in some cases incredible success, were still subject to layoffs or complete closures. It truly is tragic to see our industry be torn apart from within. The ripple effect of these closures will have repercussions throughout the entire gaming world. I mean, if you're a kid who wants to get into video game development, what does this message say? Are you willing to risk all of that time and money on a degree just to end up in an unstable industry with an uncertain future? But despite all of this negativity, all of this turmoil, the video game industry still found a way to thrive. Good games, regardless of where they come from, will continue on. You can lay off employees or even shut down an entire studio, but if the quality is there, the vision is there, then it will find a way to live on. Sure, some of these big corporations overextended themselves, but Their mishaps have allowed smaller, independent studios to shine in their place. Helldivers 2 proved that you don't need a quadruple A budget to create a viral sensation. Hades 2 showed us that new franchises can succeed. Palworld stood against an industry giant and was rewarded for it. Balatro is a Game of the Year contender and was developed by a single person. What I'm trying to say is, there are reasons to be hopeful. As long as indie studios or solo developers continue to make their creative ideas a reality, there will always be optimism for the gaming industry. Sure, some big companies will fail due to prioritizing quantity over quality, but the real magic, the stuff that is done by the developers behind the scenes, that isn't going away anytime soon. Innovation can still be found in 2024. New ideas, art styles, and stories are constantly popping up in digital storefronts. We as an industry no longer have to rely on giant corporations to distribute and fund games from smaller studios. They can function fully independently, and we must, as a collective community, support these games. If you're tired of these repetitive AAA misfires that are starting to feel more like the rule rather than the exception, then look to spend your money elsewhere. A game's budget does not necessarily equate to its quality, and I feel as if every year we are reminded more and more of that. And on that note, let's wrap it up. A bit of a longer video this week, but I wanted to spend some time and reflect on all we've been through this year. Yeah, there definitely were some missteps, but ultimately, I have faith that we're heading in the right direction. Hopefully 2025 will be a great bounce back year for the industry. Until then, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What was your favorite gaming story of 2024? What was the most surprising? What big story did I miss? I'm sure there are a few out there that slipped through the cracks. Let me know about all of your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It means a lot. I appreciate you guys as always, and I will catch you in the next one.